Let's take another moment to breathe together, dissolving a sense of separation and feeling oneness in the breath, and then extending that oneness in all directions. Let's say the invocation. Toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Oh, excuse me. Holly, step. And we're going to start with, let's elongate the circle so that we're not going to run into the walls on the sides. We're going to start with the Allah, 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 that dance. And just one thing I want to say about it, which is when we come to the part after hi, 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 ooh, make that a sacred sound. Come from the place of the who in the breath and not just a kind of release of woo-woo.
What's that?
You know. Woo! Yeah. You know, I mean, a little more subtle than that. But, you know, a free who, where it comes from a place of inner harmony.
I don't know if it's in the key of C or key flat.
Allah, 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 Allah. Okay, everybody knows this, so here we go. Wait, let's get it strong. Here we go. You sing it because my voice is Allah, 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 This morning we began with the Wazifa walk, Ya Mateen, Ya Halim, the sense of rhythm in Ya Mateen being so important to us in our practice. And tonight we're going to basically continue in that vein with Ya Sabur, Ya Jamil. There's a teaching in the Quran about Sabur Jamil, that in the most difficult of circumstances, that the awakened person proceeds with this, that faces it step by step, persevering, courageously till the end. That's the sabur, but finds the beauty in it, even in the most horrible and difficult situation. There's a place where one can cultivate that inner sense of seeing beauty, feeling beauty. And so this is, Yasabur is the quality we need to bring into our practice as murids, to not to be satisfied with what we've realized and just kind of coast, but to keep as Muhammad said, we've never known you sufficiently, to keep growing, to keep moving. It's never over. It's always a continuing journey. So that sabur, can feel like, well, this patience, this perseverance, it's heavy, but it's, if one finds the inner beauty in it, the jamil within it, then you have the key to happiness. So let's start out just walking and saying it, just Ya Sabur, Ya Jamil, 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 Ya Sabur, Ya softer. But just go into the breath. You're breathing out, Ya Sabur. Music continues. Breathing in, Ya Jamil. Walking in your own way, but maintaining this sabur, the perseverance through all pleasures and pains, difficulties, opportunities, step by step, persevering in the beauty within. Exhaling Ya Sabur, right on the path. Make sure you extend that. It's like a long Saturnian breath, full exhalation, and then draw in the Jamil. Imagine you're feeling the caravan of beings moving with you on this path. Let's come up. I want to have a lot of things to accomplish in the next, hour and 15 minutes, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I do want to present some more from some of these texts that we are reflecting on and studying, and also to go over the practices and the practice schedule that we have. And so this is from the lessons that we're studying that I gave you for this coming month. Amaliyat, spiritual psychology from these Githas. The power of thought is sometimes greater than the power of word and of action, although the thought with word is greater, and the thought and word together with action have still greater power. Power of thought is sometimes greater than the power of word and of action, although the thought with word is greater, and thought and word together with action have still greater power. The thought is created out of breath. The word is manifested out of breath. And action is done by the strength of breath. When the breath leaves the body, the action is finished. When it departs from the mouth, the word is finished. When it even passes from the mind, then the thought is finished. Therefore, all the power of thought, word, or action is in reality the power of breath, breath being the very life itself. The current of life, our connection with livingness. The purity of breath purifies thought, word, or action, and the purity of thought, word, or action purifies breath. The purity of breath purifies thought, word, or action, and the purity of thought, word, or action purifies breath. It is for this reason that namaz, wazifa, and fikr are taught in the course of Sufism, because this way that thought, that word, the namaz, the prayer, the wazifa, the prayer of calling on the divine qualities, awakening them in yourself. Fikr, we've been practicing, the refined breath, aware, awake in the heart, rhythmical, remembering presence on it. Divine presence. So these things purify breath. They all work. It's a mutually purifying situation. Just like you can get on a slippery slope where everything reinforces the falling away of stuff. This is why, in a course on breath, we're doing dancing, we're doing wazifa practice, or we're doing prayer, because that helps bring the breath into a condition that is more natural, more able to connect in these different spheres that we want to connect with. I'm not reading all of the papers I assigned, but I'm going to read just a couple of things. This is from the lesson that I drew from the Gita's on Muraqaba, or concentration. As the sun has rising, zenith, or zenith, as the sun has rising, zenith, and setting, so the mind has the above three states, rising, zenith, and setting, coming alternately. Urouj is that state of mind when a person thinks with energy and enthusiasm. I am going to do such and such a thing. This state of mind produces such a force and power in order to create its object that in its excess it produces such a mist that the faculty of reason and justice is often dimmed. The enthusiasm, the rising energy, the urouj, can produce this kind of, by its force and power, a kind of mistiness, such that reason is, you can't find it, and justice is dimmed by the force of that rising impulse. The state of mind, which is Kamal, is perceived during that time when action is being done. Now, he said, okay, Urouj is when you set out. You have that rising movement to act, that intention. I'm going to do this. You bring all that desire into it. And then when you actually are doing it, that action, that is the Kamal. The state of mind, which is Kamal, is perceived during that time when action is being done. This mist, which the energy of mind has produced, reaches in Kamal its culmination, which is the end of the joy or sorrow pertaining to that deed, because the excess of force becomes exhausted. The state of mind, which is Kamal, is perceived during that time when action is being done. This mist, which the energy of mind has produced in the Urouj stage, reaches in Kamal its culmination, which is the end of the joy or sorrow pertaining to that deed, because the excess of force becomes exhausted. Zaval is the state of mind when the power of enthusiasm is lost, the joy and sorrow of the deed are past, but the memory remains. If the impression is sorrowful, the needles prick through the sore of the wounded heart. If it was joy, a tickling and uplifting feeling is perceived, which diminishes and vanishes in time in the entire assimilation in the essence. So the Zaval is that flattening curve at the end into totally dissolving into the essence. The Urouj is the rising force to when now the action is the time when it's like the force that made it rise as exhausted, it's now plateaued, so to speak. And then it starts to fall. And that's you see in the breath, in the inhalation, in the pause at the top, in the exhalation. So, but this is another way of looking at the Kamal and state, because the way he was presenting it before was in a from coming at it from a slightly different angle. So that's why I'm offering it here. And then he concludes this by saying, the master of concentration is he or she who produces at their will not only Urouj, but Kamal and Zaval also, and attains self-mastery, when both sin and virtue bow at their feet. It is they who may sneer at the pleasures of heaven and jeer at the tortures of hell. The master of concentration is he or she who produces at their will not only Urouj, but Kamal and Zaval also. So what does that mean? I mean, it's kind of like we get used to, okay, producing Urouj. That's the way we function. Okay, I'm going to screw up my energy. I'm going to build up my energy to do this. So I'm building a, I mean, we all have some, sometimes we just, I just can't do it. I'm just depressed, to hell with it, whatever, it's not worth the candle, whatever it is, but still we're familiar with this notion of arousing Urouj. But to be able, and sometimes life is asking us to be able to do that, to arouse energy, either in oneself or in a group or in a situation, and how do you do it? I mean, how, think about it in your breath, think about, let's say, arousing the energy to do your practices, for example. How do you do that? What do you get in touch with? How do you do that in your own? Everybody, you can find it. We all have a way of reaching in when it's something that we know we want to do, but somehow or other our state is veiling us from being able to do what we know would be in our best interest to do. And so then there are ways in which we learn to do that. Now suppose, though, you're in a situation where it looks like if it doesn't peak and become activity, it's going to really have a disastrous kind of explosive peaking. So this is when you bring in your sense of how to level things into a Kamal stage, because you're taking into the compass of your breath an arena of feeling. You are able to, through the power of your breath, influence the other breaths that are involved into moving it into a leveling out process. And similarly, when things need to be the falling action, the denouement, the end, of the curve, we need to know. So sometimes by accentuating the exhalation, you see. Sometimes one promotes the Zaval and sometimes by amping up the inhalation, one can arouse the Urouj. By the balanced breath, by the breath that is balanced in both nostrils, is balanced in between inhalation and exhalation, that has a sense of holding, a lot of conflicting energies, Jamal and Jalal and whatever, in its space and still dominating it with its presence. This you can use your breath in these ways. I'm just, making some suggestions as how to approach it, because it's leading us somewhere. And these are from Murshid Sam's 40 Lessons on Breath. Disharmonies arise because of clashes in the rhythm of breath. Disharmonies arise because of clashes in the rhythm of breath. Think about it. Think about the disharmonies that arise in your situation, and instead of attributing it to this person's personality or this thing or that thing or whatever, say, okay, this is a clash in the rhythm of the breath. How would that change your way of responding to that? These disharmonies can be removed by singing, dancing, devotion, and esotericism. The esotericism part would be working with the power of the breath, for example. Therefore, Sufis use wazifas and practice zikr, not only to bring peace and harmony to each person, but also to each group. But to me, I think the really interesting thing for us to reflect on, because the last part is kind of obvious, is the clashing of the rhythms of the breath producing disharmony. Because then you can approach it, because a person who becomes masterful is able to harmonize and find a harmonious relationship with a whole wider range of human beings than someone who only has one range in which they're comfortable in. And so how to explore that through your own breath is the suggestion that is being given here. Both inhalation and exhalation have an effect upon the atmosphere. And it can be harmonious or inharmonious in relation to the atmosphere of another. You ever been in a, I mean, to me, it's hard to say, but it's like, here we are at the staff meeting at the Northwest Sufi camp, right? All these spiritual people gathered together, meditating, contemplating, but in the silence, we're just getting there, and then you hear it's somebody's little service dog wheezing, breathing, and this seriously, this dog's wheezing breath, which will go on and on and on forever, because that's just the way he breathes. Is dominating the breath of this 20 people here. Interesting. Very interesting.
Do you have some practical advice for such situations?
You gotta go deep. It reminds me of the story of Shaku Soyen's awakening experience. Because he was the monk who was the first Buddhist teacher to bring Buddhism to America. He was the teacher of Nyogen Senzaki. After he went through all of his training in Japan and Rinzai Zen, and was graduated from the monastery in every way, but he decided he had the idea he wanted to go to Southeast Asia and see the way that the Theravadan monks were practicing, and he got on and he set off in that direction on a boat. And the boat ran into what they call the doldrums, where there was no wind, nothing, and they sat for days in this place, which was infested with mosquitoes. And here he is sitting on deck with all the other people, and the mosquitoes are really, he's a monk. He's got on the monks. He's exposed, the mosquitoes are really irritating him, much more than the wheezing dog, and so he goes deep, he says, he just says, okay, he said, and instead of fighting it, he throws open his robe, and he goes into the deep oceanic meditation, the next thing he knows, some hours, a long time later, he comes back into self-awareness, because it started to rain. And he looks down in front of him, and there are all these red berries everywhere in front of him. And these are the bodies of the mosquitoes that have gorged themselves on himself. And, fallen off, died, and there they are all in front of him. And now, it was, it comes up. Because really, if our level of awareness is being agitated in some fundamental way, and we're masterfully working on the spiritual path and meditatively, we got to go deeper. And here's a great example of how an awakened being might approach that. What's your other choice?
Deep.
Deep, yeah. This is pre-deep. You don't have to. Other than you're getting more and more agitated, breaking your speaker, doing all this stuff, harming yourself, getting more and more agitated. Okay. I got off the subject. Both inhalation and exhalation have an effect upon the atmosphere, and it can be harmonious or inharmonious in relation to the atmosphere of another. But when the etheric element is present, it transmutes the nafs, the ego mind, and prevents inharmony. The etheric breath is developed through training and grace. Now, Murshid is very strong on bringing the ether element in to the situations to bring harmony. In other words, if you bring the ether element into the earth, the experience of earth, breathing the earth, you get a sense of the sacredness of the earth, the holiness of the earth, the livingness of the earth. If you bring the ether into the water element, again, at the spiritual level, you get the sense of the water of baptism, the water of purification, the well of the Zimzim, the spring of all of that sense of the living water, and water that's living in spirit with the spirit. And if you bring the ether element into the fire, you get the transmutation of the fire into light. And if you bring the ether element into the air, you get the breath of the Holy Spirit. The spirit of guidance. So, in the practice that I gave this morning, of just going into Fikr and reflecting on the elements, and then at the end, we reflected on the ether element. So what I would like for us to do now is to go back and to do the ether breath, and to get a sense of that element, and then again reflecting on the earth, breathing on the earth, and then bringing ether. Combining, as we're breathing the earth, then remembering the ether at the same time, and see how that changes your breath and your relationship to the element. Yeah.
Are we doing the elemental breaths as we do these, or are we doing?
No, we're not doing the elemental breaths. We're just we're doing the Fikr breath,
right.
And we're noticing the way the different elements affect our breath and the things that come up in it when we're doing it. We're relating to the qualities of the elements, and we're just letting our breath connect with earth. I think that's better than doing it the other way. So let's begin then with the ether breath. Let's see what I wrote here. Concentrate on the qualities of ether, space, such as the luminous container of space itself, stillness and pure potency. The etheric breath draws directly from the emptiness, which is full of light and life, and which points to the nature of your soul. One should feel there is enough space for your life. The breath is somewhat hidden and mysterious. It may be imperceptible, as if breathing through every pore of the body. But the main thing is, again, we're practicing connecting. We were connecting with the quality of space itself, stillness, emptiness, and to feel it. We want to really refine our breath. So beginning with a long, refined breath, we begin to refine it even more. And to feel it not only coming in and out of our lungs, but feeling it in our body. The breath is slow, almost imperceptible, and very refined. Connecting with the space itself, its luminous emptiness. Now, just for purposes of experience, I'd like you to, as you just breathe in and out now, we're just leaving behind the ether, we're going to bring it back. Okay. We want to consider, again, the earth as we're breathing the Fikr, normal breath of Fikr. And considering the earth, but considering the earth now, connecting with the earth in terms not just of its positive qualities like service and steadiness, but the difficulties that come up with our engagement in the earth. It's getting stuck, getting unable to move, inertia, depression, fear, too much caution, not being able to rise into a clarity of thinking, being kind of overwhelmed. Those elements of earth, along with its just, as they might come up in your life. Engaging with it, so you feel how it affects you. Slogging through the mire, I always say, being a mire myself. And then remember the ether element without leaving the earth behind, and allow your breath to now also be influenced by the ether element and to connect with the ether element, bringing it right down into the earth, right into these stuck situations, let's say. Okay, that's long enough to notice some difference. And when you get, so I mean, this is very practical. You know, I mean, things come up. When we get stuck in relation to an element generally. I mean, if we understand how the elements work. I mean, for example, we're stuck in the war with the difficulties we face in relation to the water element are difficulties of emotionality, you know, you can't stop crying, you can't get, I mean, the emotions have taken over so much that everything is clouded over your whole awareness faculty. You're just caught up, you know, I mean, maybe it could be hate, it could be infatuation, it could be anything, but you know, despair. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, it's percolating in there in your emotional body, and it's disorienting and a big roller coaster ride. And you know, so bring. You know, I'm just kind of freewheeling it, but you know, I mean, the areas in the areas where difficulties come up in the realm where the positive qualities would be things such as liquidity and ease and heart feeling and cohesion and that natural downward flowing of the water, you know, I mean, but where is it that, you know, I mean, emotional confusion and that sort of thing that comes up, that's blinding, that comes up. So just breathe now, being aware of water and in your life, but maintaining the fikr while you call to awareness and connect with the water element, you know, engaging with some of the difficult qualities in which it can come up. And then, again, remember the ether and at the same time engage with that emptiness, that light. Let that reach the disharmonious waves of water in your breath. Again, that's long enough to get an impression of it. I just want to take you through this as a way of approaching this, you know, practically seeing it in the midst of your life. And when you do see, you know, that you're agitated, I mean, you know, I'm not going to go through each of them, but if you were to going through fire, it would be in aspects of where anger, you're just ruled by the reactivity of your of anger itself and others, and to tame that, with the ether. It mutes it. It transmutes it, mutes and transmutes, and with air, the confusion, mental confusion, generally, and can be like also hysterical laughter would be a kind of air excess, that sort of thing. But again, to experiment with this, working with the elements both in the very positive way, but then also in the Course when it comes up for you, when something comes up for you, and you can look at it and say, okay, this is in the sphere of fire, or this is in the sphere of air, and and I'm going to bring into this the feeling of ether, let it penetrate into the air.